Another day, another lift. Another friggin' day, another pump, to put it simply. But what I was about to get into is I think I should try to come up with the however many, my version of the ancestral tenets, right? I think I don't remember how many ancestral tenets there were from the Liver King philosophy, but I definitely have my own, not only lifting related, kind of just as a dude, but they sort of coincide, and I can guarantee one of them would be outcome independence, which is kind of the idea that you want something to happen, but at the same time, if it doesn't happen and you don't succeed at whatever that goal was, then you can still appreciate that the attempt and the practice involved in and of itself was worthwhile, because let's say, insert a world where, I want to make my own Jesse Pinkman, Tiger Wood, whatever, you get the reference, like fancy box, in a wood shop, right? I'm sure there's one around that would, you kind of like rent the space. But let's say I wanted to make a really fancy little, just, chest, just a little something. Am I going to be as good as an artisanal woodworker? I can look up a tutorial and I can try to look up the basics and do it, but probably not. So the end goal was I want to make this really cool thing. Now I do it, I practice, I execute it, I make it happen, I get all the glue and nails or whatever, and I sand it and I freaking get a coat of tung oil on it or something, let it dry, and then boom, I got a final product. Oh shit, that's not as good as I wanted. In comparison to the pro guy, this thing freaking kind of blows. But now, from having gone through the process of doing it, well, I'm better at it anyway. I'm way more experienced now at using like the router and the belt sander and the freaking whatever. So if I try to do it again, the odds that I'm going to be able to do it better than the first time, pretty substantial, if not 100% likely. So that's kind of taken away from the idea of outcome independence, and more so just the idea that actually trying to do something, going for it without too much pressure of an expectation on yourself is just a really valuable exercise anyway. But more like outcome independence is it's more about the process. I got a comment from yesterday's video that was basically, all right, Sam, you're so goal oriented. It's always a bulk, it's always a cut, it's always get stronger on this movement, just really bring it. What are you going to do later? What are you going to do when you might kind of phase out bodybuilding, or at a point you got to tone down? Like, I'm not going to be upper 200s or mid 200 pounds forever. Eventually there's probably going to be more kind of just slimmer, lean Sam, just for longevity's sake. But the question was, what are you going to do then? Are you going to have to pick a new goal? And in that sense, or just to kind of answer the question, not really. And what I mean by that is, my motivation isn't so much the end goal. It's more so just knowing I'm on track towards whatever goal I have in the current moment. So right now, off season, or I shouldn't even say, I gotta stop saying off season. It's just a bulk. It's just a weight size gaining phase. But right now, bulk, eat a substantial amount of food. Not too much right now, but eventually it'll become a lot. Lift like a beast, try to grow. That's the goal. That's my primary objective. So I'm not unsatisfied right now that I'm not at the end goal state. Like, I'm not sitting here upset like, oh, why am I not 260 pounds yet? Whatever. It doesn't matter that I'm not there right now. I know I'm on track to get there, and all I've got to do is make it happen. So it's that is my sort of internal validation. Like, if I'm seeking a dopamine hit from this entire routine of working out, it doesn't come from just hitting a certain number on the scale. Obviously that's cool. Like if I'm aiming for 260 or something, and then I finally get in the scale and it says 260, well, yeah, I achieved what the goal was. So I still get a good feeling from that. But on the way there, I'm 240 right now. Well, 239.8 this morning. But if next week I'm 241 on average, well, hell yeah, I'm on freaking track. And if you can have a motivation or a more like an appreciation for those short kind of week by week changes, well, then it makes it that much easier to reach those month by month, year by year goals that you're aiming for. So I'm not even really trying to focus on 6 months down the line, 8 months down the line in terms of the gym based progress. I'm thinking this week. I'm thinking today. What do I got to do today? I'm going to eat 250 grams of protein, 400 or so grams of carbs, 90 or something grams of fats. I'm going to train like a freak. I'm going to do my cardio. And in terms of the gym, those are really just the 3 points that I need to hit. So as long as I check those boxes off, I'm good. I'm in the green. I'm building momentum forward. So obviously, that sounds kind of fun for me right now because I'm big, I'm strong, I'm getting to eat a lot of food, and I just get to watch the scale go up. But what's a little trickier and I think more important to have like a value on is when you're trying to lose weight, when you're trying to get leaner. The guy who's 280, who's got a goal of 200, or who has a goal of 180, or whatever it may be, that's a long path. And it takes a while for like the real visual changes to appear. But once they start to show up, they actually kind of increase in intensity. Going from 280 to 230, that's pretty substantial. Going from 230 to 200, you're going to look really different. So as you get lighter, every pound of body fat that you lose is more noticeable. So in the beginning, it's kind of slow. If you lose 5 pounds and you're a heavy set dude, nobody's really going to notice, right? But you will, because you can check the scale. You can see that your calorie restrictions and your dieting and your cardio has been working. And that's got to give off a freaking big ass green light in your head to say, I'm making this shit happen. All I got to do is wait, and then before you know it, boom, 200, or whatever that goal ends up being. So being able to just kind of be content with the day by day will make the year by year process, or the year by year progress, just kind of happen, And I feel like that's how it feels for me. Like even thinking back over this whole last prep, now that it's over, I mean, I was, obviously it felt like it was a long time, but looking back, I mean, it's like a blink, and all the uncomfortability of that whole 5-month prep of, not eating, and I know like you kind of sound like a brat when you're like, oh, man, I didn't eat canes for a couple months, but you get there's a certain, we know what we're talking about here. So all of the times that I opened the cupboard, looked at something, man, I'm already at my calorie limit for the night, shut it, went back to bed. All the hours of cardio, and I'm not talking just like hours cumulative, like hours per day, 2 being the most, but usually I was bouncing around an hour and a half. Like in the moment, felt pretty freaking difficult. But since all I was focused on was like a day by day, like, all right, I got a few goals: do my cardio, stay under my calorie goal, train, repeat, make sure I'm really hydrated. And hell, now current me gets to reap the benefits. Whereas, all those little bits of like, oh man, I want to eat something, screw it. I can barely remember. I can't even really pinpoint any specific moment where I was thinking that. So, something to think about, right? Just focus on the day by day, and then things will begin to fall into place. So the day by day today is back. It's going to be some back. So a little bit higher volume, because I'm going to start treating back as 2 distinct muscle groups, upper, mid, and then lats. Whereas before I've been thinking, all right, hit my back. 2 sets of pull downs, 2 sets of rows, 2 sets of pullovers, yip-de-doo. you know, and clearly it worked. Like, you know, my back has been developing. But I think by treating my lats as their own group and then my mid back as its own group, I'm going to actually maybe get a more solid stimulus to my back as a whole. So that'll kind of put me at, I'll see. You know, if I hit one muscle group, usually that's going to be about 7 or 8 sets per. But back is a little, they kind of play into each other. You know, if I'm doing a row, as much as I'm going to try to just make it mid back, I'm still going to get some lat activation. So I might not, I don't think I'm going to end up doing like 8 sets of rows, like, you know, upper back focused, and 8 sets of pull downs. It'll probably be more like a 5 or 6 sets of each. But, well, I guess there's no but. That's probably just about it. So I'm going to get through all this traffic because they're doing a bunch of construction around here. And let's just get in there and get started. I'm going to start with lats first. So, you know, 5, 6 sets of lats. And then probably a similar volume of mid-back rowing. But maybe actually a little bit less, because even though on a pull down, there we go. Even though on a pull down, it's mainly lats, you're going to get a touch of mid-back as well. You know, not like a insane amount like a row, but kind of a little. So it's, that's what makes it tricky, because it's like all the rowing movements get a little lats, and all the pull down lat movements get a little mid-back. So I think just trying to balance the two will be solid. But I'm going to start differently than last time, and instead of just jumping straight to a pull down or something, I'm going to start with these light-ish single arm pullovers. So, you know, if you really feel it with a rope and you're doing both arms at once, do that. Honestly, I'd prefer that because that's more efficient, because I can just do both sides at once. But I can squeeze each side individually so much harder doing it like this. So kind of leaning forward a little bit, holding onto the upright for support, and then really digging down. You know, I want it to feel like, I mean, really, I can feel my arm run into my lat on the side, like in here, and I'm trying to pull like so hard that it squishes my arm up against myself. Another little kind of mental note is I'm thinking like I'm holding the sword backwards, and I'm trying to sheath it right at my hip. That's a pretty good basic visualization. Let's get started. I'm going to alternate 10, 10, 10, 5, 5, 5 until they're cooked. Something like that. There we go. Okay. One more of those. Same thing. Good. Okay. All right. Let's move on to that pull down behind me. Well, I guess behind you, rather. The 2 plates and a 25 on this machine is freaking heavy. I've said it a few times. This is where the machine pivots. This is this little ball bearing system. The handle is like 30% closer to this than the weight is, right? So it's like you're on a seesaw and one kid's sitting in the middle, the other kid's sitting on the end. Obviously, the other kid on the far end will be extra heavy. So this is an efficient use of weight. I don't think I could ever do 4 plates here. You know, leave that to like Brian Shaw or something. All right. See? See? Yeah, okay. Oh, okay. Whew. That was a good heavy set, but I gotta drop the 25s off. This next one will be probably more like 12 reps. Whew. Two. Ta. Hey. Okay. Oh, okay. Let's do a regular pull down now. I did a feeler rep of 200 pounds. That's within my wheelhouse. So let's do the same thing as those pull downs I just did. A heavy set first, and then a more controlled, lighter set second. So 260. Yeah, the 300, which would be the full stack, I think that might be a little much for today. Then for a good song recommendation, Demons by Human Error Project. Very good. There we go.
Hey. Oh my gosh. Oh, okay, let's drop it to 200 and do one more. Gee. Oh, okay. Oh, all right. See. Okay, let's do a seated cable row. Same as the pull downs. I think anything over 200, especially after the movements I've already done so far, would be a little much. So this will be a higher rep set with 200. So I guess, let me kind of break it down. I kind of have a few styles of set that I like, or that I at least go back and forth between. There's just regular, heavy, straight set failure with partials, not reps that are, excessively fast or super slow and controlled, just like decent standard pace. And then there's a lighter set like this, slightly faster reps, lighter weight, and I'm kind of imagining more of a quicker, like stretch to contraction, with just, obviously weight throughout the rep, so that I kind of hit failure in more of a burnout way rather than more of like I physically can't freaking move the weight kind of way. And a good mix of the two I like. That's kind of what I'm aiming for. Just diverse training. And a diverse playlist. Let me pick something else. And it's good. A little yeet never hurt anybody. All right, perfect. Oh, one more of those. All right, come on. So one note, I'm not pulling down here to my stomach. That would be a little more lat involvement. I'm trying to get a lot of stuff up here working. So instead of elbows down towards my stomach, elbows a little more out towards my chest, like my lower sternum, because I'm trying to work a little more upper back. So I could probably do a whole back day right here, you know, maybe sit a little further forward and bias my lats, and then lean back and pull up a little more and bias my upper back. You know, as much as you need different movements, you can do movements different ways, you know, work different parts of your build. So might save you some time if you're in a busy gym. Come on. Okay. Okay. All right. I've got a plan for the finisher too, and then back will be complete. So it looks like 6 sets for lats, 6 for mid-back. So this is a very doable movement. Now this is a heavy stack, but I promise if you've been working out for a little while, you can do the stack when it has this extra pulley. Because it says 250 pounds, but it's really only 125 because of the mechanical advantage of the cable. So just grab a seat, put a bench next to it. You can even sit on the floor if you don't have anything to pop a squat on. But what I'm going for is not difficulty from the weight itself, but more so that at the top of every rep, I want to feel like my elbows are going to wrap around my body and bump into each other. Like that's how hard I'm trying to pull my shoulders and my scapula and my shoulder blades back together. And then just use the weight to kind of accommodate a solid stretch and then do it again. Not exactly like a brute force set, but as a finisher, I like it. So 1 or 2 of these, and then we will pose down and see how we're looking. Wide-ish grip, not crazy wide though. All right. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Oh yeah, just one of those will do. This is a big workout. All right, we got ourselves a cheeky little 11 setter. 6 sets of lats, 5 sets of upper back. Not to, kind of self-prophesize like I did in the car, but that was exactly what I freaking expected. So I'm cool with that. Let's see a little through the shirt lat spread first, just to get a bit of a gauge. But that's a good sign. I mean, not even really flexing, just kind of standing, but with my arms like, well, just pulling the shirt in. A little bit of freaking separation, but let me pull it extra tight and do a little something. So if you'll notice, which, maybe you won't, it's kind of, it's not like super obvious unless you're already sort of aware of like, back anatomy. But you see those little like kind of individual bumps, like right, I guess it'd be right here. Like see how it's, going backwards. How this shoulder has a bump, and then there's another one right below it, like right kind of, you see that thing, right? So that's what I'm feeling. Obviously, like, my mid traps as well. But during those, there we go. Yeah, during those upper back focus things, I'm trying to pull in way up here. Whereas on like, a row where I might work a little more lats, which I'll still throw in, like those aren't off the table, but just not today. That's where I'll pull more down here, and get more of this, more of this lat flexing, if you follow me. But let's stop freaking just looking at it through the shirt and actually see what we're working with. Yeah, there we go. Oh, yeah, I am, it's going to be not tragic, but an unfortunate day when I really have to say goodbye to the Christmas tree. But that day is not today, it would seem. Not freaking today. Holy crap. Even just doing a freaking back lat spread and pulling my back to get my arms up is freaking tricky. But yeah, for basically 240, probably more like 239, but for a morning weight of 240, still having very visible ab separation plus Christmas tree and everything else, we're good. We are looking freaking good in terms of this trajectory. So maybe I should title this one the lean bulk, because I don't want to get too soft. Like, at the end, I'll be softer than right now, but I don't want to put on body fat for no reason, and I think that's something which I haven't expressed maybe well enough before. Not to make this like the new classic end of lift spot for a discussion, like just sitting right here in the shadow. But typically, when I look at, how I've talked about bulks before, usually the problem that someone's going to run into isn't, man, I just have no idea. It's not a lack of information. It's more of a just inability to execute. Because normally the problem is I can't eat enough to grow. So what that tells me is I got to really hype up, or if I'm trying to give, like a tip on the topic, I'm going to hype up, dude, eat more food. Eat more freaking food, and the scale is going to change, right? You're going to freaking see what happens. You start giving your dog scraps off the dinner table every freaking night, well, guess what? He's going to get heavier. Now, he's not doing bodybuilding weight training, so what kind of weight do you think he's going to put on? But the basic logic still applies. Like somehow everyone is very comfortable with, ooh, your dog looks like he needs some more exercise and he might need to eat a little less food. But when it comes to us, as people, I don't know, man, you're a hard gainer. Calorie deficits don't work for you, man. You must be the one thermodynamic anomaly in the whole freaking universe, right? So usually I'm going to say, you got to grub. But for those who don't have so much a problem have so much of a problem with actually getting enough food into their system, that's a different situation, right? Because then it becomes more of a question of how do I go about this, off-season phase. I'll get comments even when I don't bring it up, like, dude, I want to bulk, but I don't want to lose my abs. I'm pretty lean right now, whatever height and weight they are, and it's like I don't want to lose that. And I certainly haven't helped the general preconceptions of bulking after these last few, over the last few years, where I'm busting out a full day of eating of like a ribeye next to 2 packs of ramen, next to, drinking half a gallon or a quarter gallon of chocolate milk all in one meal, which I don't regret, but that's not exactly how I'm going to go about this bulk. But that was my logic at the time. I got to eat if I want to grow. If I want to eat a lot of food, well, I don't mind eating a bunch of treats. Now I'm a bit more controlled. Like this morning's breakfast was some cream of wheat with some mixed berries, frozen, a little bit of brown sugar. Very good. And I feel good after eating it. All my meals are a little simpler now, just because, not to get off tangent, but the more food that I'm eating, I've started to notice I just feel better when the food is a lot simpler, because it just goes through me better. I can kind of absorb the energy better. I don't have such a weird gut. But getting back to what I was saying, there is no argument against you've got to eat more food if you want to grow. But in a proper bulk, it's the same as a dieting phase, which I haven't, historically I've had a bulk where it's like, all right, man, diet's over, boom, 5,000 calories every day. And I gained a ton of weight, and I grew and bulked, but did I have to put on so much body fat? Not exactly. Now, I was okay with that because I knew I was going to be able to diet it off later. And for me, it's like I just love to grub. But in a diet down and a bulk up, you're basically just taking your maintenance calories, right about freaking here. Let's say you've calculated it, you've eaten this much food for a few weeks, and you've seen that the scale hasn't changed, and your maintenance calories is 2,500. Well, 2,500 isn't going to cut it. You've got to increase that calorie intake on the daily to 2,750, something like that. At least a minor surplus. Doesn't have to be 1,000 calories above, but at least. Yeah, if you want to notice, like if you want to actually be in a gaining phase, probably 200-ish minimum to start. And then watch the scale. All right, am I growing? Hell yeah, you're good. Repeat as usual. And then once the scale slows down, or you can kind of tell you're starting to kind of, I'm not really growing, another 250, another 200, which would be about 50 grams of carbs, 75 grams of carbs-ish, right? Something like that. Now, we're all used to hearing Rich Piana say at a meal, right? So, we're going from 8 meals a day. Whoa, guess what? We're eating a 9th meal. I don't calculate it like that, but the logic is the same. Each of those meals that he's eating is X amount of protein, X amount of fats, X amount of carbs. So throughout the bigger by the day is another increase in calories every so often, progressively. So that's all you got to do, man. And it's easy to say, it's very easy to say, hey, just add 200 calories every day this week. Really be consistent with it and go on about your day. You might think 200 calories, that's nothing. That's a bagel. So the issue is to be able to consistently add 200 calories would mean you have to know exactly how much food you're eating. So now we're just circling back to getting a macro tracker and actually tracking your macros, because you don't always have to be like, the macro tracking doesn't have to be, oh crap, I hit my limit, in like a dieting phase, which it kind of does. But in a gaining phase, it's still a super necessary tool because it's going to let you actually consistently fill up your tank. Right? Having a macro tracker is like having your fuel gauge in your car. If you didn't have a fuel gauge and you didn't know when you were running out of gas, everybody would be freaking pulled over on the side of the road calling, what's the freaking thing? I was about to say AutoZone. That's not right. Calling whoever to bring them some gas because they don't know what the hell's going on. So once you actually track how much food and how much, proteins, carbs, fats, everything that you're really eating, it gets so much easier to actually make sure you're on track, because I've got 2 tools at my disposal. I guess I've got 3. I have a calorie tracker, which lets me know how much food I'm eating and make sure that I'm consistent. I've got the scale, weigh myself every morning after going to the bathroom, but before eating or drinking anything. That's the most consistent time to weigh yourself. This will tell me, am I growing gradually week by week? Am I stagnated? Am I losing body fat consistently? And then tool number 3 is the mirror, because the scale doesn't tell you everything. If you're eating too much food, sure, the scale might be going up and you're thinking, hell yeah. Then you look at yourself in the mirror and it's like, ooh, crap. Maybe, maybe 2 king-size Reese's cups after every workout was a little crazy. Maybe, ooh, this guy's looking at himself in the mirror and he's thinking, ooh, maybe Sam wasn't lying about cardio on a bulk. Ooh, things like that. So if you can use these tools properly, grow steadily, and I'm not against the logic of a lean bulk or like main gaining, right? My issue is more so just the idea that if you eat at maintenance perpetually, that's all you need to do, and you will just grow magically, right? You're going to reach a point where just eating your maintenance calories is just going to maintain your build. And I main gained my whole freaking beginning of working out. I wasn't bulking. I hit my protein. I ate, what felt like a normal amount of food every day, and then I trained. And then I kind of stagnated up at that 200-ish pound range, and that's where things got extra crazy now. But I'm not anti-main gaining. Like it's always this back and forth of guys with different, let's just say, training philosophies, where nobody likes to say, all right, you think that, I think this. Let's go on a better day. That's not exactly how how it ends up playing out. But at some point, you really do need a dietary intervention, actually tracking your shit and eating pretty in at least a specific way, so that you can get the end results you want. And it's not for my benefit, but I know the feeling of being plateaued. Not for like super long. Usually if I plateau in a bulk, that's by the end of it, and that's kind of my indicator, like, dude, you can't eat any more food. This is as big as you're getting, man. You got to cut it and start peeling down, or vice versa. But not only do I know the feeling of being plateaued, but I know the just fucking sick feeling of progressing, getting bigger and stronger. And I'm not talking about only in the last few years. Now that I'm up in the freaking 200s, even going from 170 to 190-ish over the course of like however many years that took. I've got old weight measurements. I got to look at how long it took me to gain however much weight. But going from 165-pound sophomore high school Sam to almost 200, like lean 190 senior Sam, it's fucking crazy. Not to drop an F-bomb on you, but insanity. Like I look back at those pictures and I can see, like, okay, this was back in January of 2019. This was January of 2019, and then this was December of 2020, or just a few years later. I'm almost reliving the feeling of making the progress before, because it's just freaking awesome. So maybe I'm just a meathead and I really like it more than the average dude, which I think is probably true. But if you're into the same thing, if you have that same itch in the back of your mind of, yeah, I want to put some more meat in my bones, to just not to say dilly daddle, but to just, kind of meander through your routine, come to the gym, get a pump, go home, eat whatever. At some point, that's not going to cut it, right? And you got to up your game. So I guess that's kind of my phrase. What I really got to do, I'm going to get a big whiteboard, and I'm going to draw some graphs and stuff to, or I should do this. It's not planned yet, and just kind of break down a couple of these key points, because there's a lot of ways to make calorie tracking easier. Put a kitchen scale in your fridge or in your on your kitchen counter. Mine never leaves the counter. It's always there. May as well be the same as a freaking stovetop. Like it'd be cool if it was built in. That would be freaking sweet. And it had like little illuminated lights that like poke through the granite. That'd be nuts. Just every time you look at something, flip the box over, nutrition label, that sort of stuff. Because you can make it easier on yourself by doing things in an efficient way. But now I'm just chatting, so let's get in the car. Let's get in the car and have some other titillating conversation. Not sure what about yet. Yeah, there we go. That was a good 10 minutes of playing on my phone, sitting in the car with a pumped back. I feel cush. I feel very, very tight in the seat right now. So now all I got to do is go home, edit this thing together. It'll take a while to actually render. So what I've been doing is once I finish splicing it all, into whatever, hit render, then do my cardio right next to it as it's going. So like a little bit of a multitask, not exactly. That's one thing I miss a little bit from when I used to record all these on my phone, is what I could do was edit the video while I was doing my cardio the next morning. And it was like, it was just a really good multitask. And it would totally distract me from the cardio, because it would take like 15 minutes to finish the thing. And then before you know it, I'm already 15 minutes into cardio. Now I can just scroll, a YouTube video or play Clash Royale or something, and boom, cardio's over. I really can't emphasize that enough. It's going to help me stay on the leaner end of things. Not to mention let's just break it down. I won't go on about cardio for like 20 minutes, but I'm really looking for a few key benefits. One, more energy expenditure. I'm just being more active. So, what am I even saying? Well, I'm being more active, right? So I'm at a baseline burning more calories per day, which is going to kind of help me get through all the food that I'm eating, because the more active you are, the more your metabolism is going to kind of like ramp up, if you can imagine. And just the way I kind of imagine it, or not imagine, but maybe visualize it, is it just makes you a little bit more like you got a fire that's burning hotter, so when you throw more fuel on, it's actually going to get used efficiently. But that's just kind of a bro science way to describe it. So it's going to help me stay leaner by helping me burn more energy consistently. Even if I am eating more food, even in a surplus, it's still going to have effects in terms of my body fat deposition, and not in a quart kind of style deposition. And then in the gym, it's going to help me lift for more effectively. So if I'm doing a leg day, and let's say I don't do cardio for the next 4 months, and I eat a crap ton of food, which it's going to work its way up to becoming, now I'm 250 pound Sam, or I'm 255 pound Sam, or 260. I'm doing no cardio, and now I'm just freaking a behemoth. If I start squatting or doing leg presses, I'm going to be freaking breathing out of my mind trying to catch my breath between these sets, because my cardio would I don't want to say go to shit, because I'd still be training hard consistently. Like, that's going to help your cardio, but it wouldn't be as good as it is now. So that's where, even if you're not thinking cardio for the sake of just leanness, it does improve your in the gym performance, because I'm going to be able to do a really crazy set, catch my breath, kind of reoxygenate my system more effectively from having better cardio, so I'm not going to be so winded. Right? I mean, what's the whole point of coming into the gym for the weight-based session, the real training session? It's not to wind yourself. It's to just wreck whatever targeted muscle you're aiming for on that day, and have that be the limiting factor. I want my ability to even move the rep or move the weight in my last couple reps to be what's limiting me from doing one more, not the fact that I might be doing a set of leg press and then thinking, rack it, simply because I couldn't catch my breath. So that's going to come into play more so for really big, not just big sets, but big muscle groups. I'd say probably back and quads are your biggest ones. So if you're doing a really big ass set of bent over barbell rows, or really heavy seated cable rows, or pull downs or whatever, leg press, squats, I want to have to rack it, or actually hit failure and put it on the safeties, because my quads gave out, not because my lungs gave out. But even on the reps or the sets that aren't that level of heft, you're still just going to have a better workout. I mean, if cardio is going to make your in-between set recovery period more effective and probably just more enjoyable, who's going to have more fun doing an arm day? The guy who's
Like obviously I'd breathe pretty heavy, but not like that. Like I'm not bending over on the bench between sets of curls. Or the guy who goes, all right, that was a good one. Then he comes back and does another one. All right, so I guess if you haven't bulked before, then you might not feel the benefit. But I've had off seasons where cardio was put on the back burner, and I paid the price. I got a lot softer than I needed to, and I was a lot sweatier than I needed to be during the workouts, just because I spent so much energy on the recovery in between sets rather than the damage of the sets themselves, if you sort of follow my logic. So all that's to say is, if you've got an off season, if you've got a bulking phase in mind, just keep that in the front of your brain, or maybe the back of your brain, whichever spot you can put it in that makes you think, I better do a little bit of cardio. I better do a little bit of cardio today. The seated bike's open. I'm just going to play on my phone for 10 minutes in the parking lot anyway before I leave. And it gets easy. Once you get into the groove, it gets pretty freaking easy. So I think that's all I got to say. I brought a little Tupperware container of 8 ounces of turkey, but I didn't bring any carbs. I was planning on getting like a gas station snack or something on the way, but then I forgot I got gas yesterday, so I don't have to stop. So just a little post-workout protein. But what I really need is some post-workout carbs. So I'm going to get home, and I think I'm just going to have a repeat of my breakfast. Do another big thing of a big bowl of cream of wheat with some berries and some brown sugar. That would be freaking sweet. But yeah, nothing else to say. So I will see you for a rather pumped arm day tomorrow. I guarantee it.